Namaskara and welcome to BIC Talks, a podcast brought to you by Bangalore International Centre, where we present conversations that move, inform, and encourage discourse.
Namaskar and welcome to an evening looking back at the lives of two great personalities who shaped modern India. What we are presenting today is an abridged version of a highly successful play called The Prophet and the Poet. On this very special occasion of the birth anniversary of Rabindranath Tagore, we are presenting a one-person abridged version retitled Gurudev and Bapu. January 30, 1948. 3 shots were fired at point-blank range. 2 words were heard when the lifeless body collapsed on the lawns of Birla House in Delhi. Hey Ram. This was the tragic end for the illustrious son of India, the one who had done more than all else put together to free India from the shackles of British subjugation. Another illustrious son of India, who had done more than all else to gain recognition for India on the intellectual stage of the world, had ended his conscious moments by dictating these words: "Oh, deceitful one, in simple life you have craftily scattered the snares of false faith. One who endures your deception without effort is rewarded by you with the right to eternal peace." In their last moments, one remembered his God with reverence, the other called his God deceitful, and staked his claim on eternal peace as reward from this deceitful muse. Friends, to start with, we find one from the western corner of India, Gujarat, and the other from across the subcontinent in the east, Bengal. One called the other Mahatma, and the other addressed the first as Gurudev. They admired and revered each other as few friends do. They differed with each other as few adversaries do. In the year 1901, Tagore was 40 years old and Gandhi was 32. Neither had attained a stature that extended much beyond their primary spheres of activity. That was Bengali literature for Tagore. For Gandhi, it was representing the oppressed British Indians in South Africa. In December 1913, 2 friends of Tagore, Charlie Andrews and Willie Pearson, left for South Africa to advance the cause of Gandhi there. When Gandhi decided to disband his Phoenix ashram in South Africa and return to India, it was Charlie Andrews who suggested that the residents of Phoenix ashram stay at Gurudev's Santiniketan before Gandhi could make alternate arrangements for them. The boys from Phoenix arrived at Santiniketan in November 1914. Soon after their arrival, Tagore observed, "The Phoenix boys, they have discipline where they should have ideals. They are trained to obey. For obedience is good not because it is good in itself, but because it's a sacrifice. These boys are in danger of forgetting to wish for anything, and wishing is the best part of attainment." However, a few days later, he wrote to Mahatma ji, "Dear Mr. Gandhi, I write this letter to thank you for allowing your boys to become our boys as well, and thus form a living link in the sadhana of both our lives. Very sincerely yours." As early as 1918, Gandhi wanted Hindi to be the national language. "Dear Gurudev, is not Hindi the only possible national language for interprovincial intercourse and for all other national proceedings? Should not Hindi be the language principally used in the forthcoming Congress? I feel that if we are to touch the masses and if national servants are to come in contact with the masses all over India, the above questions ought to be treated as of the utmost urgency. I am yours sincerely." Dear Mr. Gandhi, of course, Hindi is a possible national language for interprovincial intercourse in India. But about its introduction at the Congress, I think we cannot enforce it for a long time to come. It is truly a foreign language for the Madras people. Most of the politicians will find it difficult to express themselves adequately in this language. So I think Hindi will have to remain optional in our national proceedings. The strain of differences had started to tell. Agreement on the malady, disagreement on the remedy, accord at the ends, discord on the means. Gandhi had advocated boycott of British educational institutions. He had prescribed satyagraha, charkha, and swaraj as the trident of his freedom movement. Tagore objected to each one of these, either in letters to friends or in articles published. Gandhi defended his position firmly through the same media. The debate between them was on political issues, but was elevated to a philosophical plane. Dear Mahatma ji, passive resistance is a force which is not necessarily moral in itself. It can be used against truth as well as for it. The danger inherent in all force grows stronger when it is likely to gain success. For then it becomes temptation. I know your teaching is to fight against evil by the help of the good, but such a fight is for heroes, not for men led by impulses of the moment. Yours, etc." 2 years later, he wrote in an article, "Brahma Vidya in India has for its object mukti, emancipation, while Buddhism has nirvana, extinction. It may be argued that both have the same idea by different names, but names represent attitudes of mind, emphasize particular aspects of truth. Mukti draws our attention to the positive and nirvana to the negative side of truth. In my humble opinion, rejection is as much an ideal as the acceptance of a thing. It is as necessary to reject untruth as it is to accept truth. All religions teach that two opposite forces act upon us, and that the human endeavor consists of a series of eternal rejections and acceptances. Non-cooperation with evil is as much a duty as cooperation with good. The poet has come to the conclusion that non-cooperation is not dignified enough for the India of his vision, that it is a doctrine of negation and despair, separation, narrowness. I shall endeavor in all humility to answer the poet's doubts. I may fail to convince him, or the reader who may have been touched by his eloquence, but I would like to assure him and India that non-cooperation in conception is not any of the things he fears, and he need have no cause to be ashamed of his country for having adopted non-cooperation. Non-cooperation may have come ahead of its time. The world must then wait. I do not say for a moment that we should belittle the work immediately to hand. But when the bird is roused by the dawn, its awakening is not absorbed altogether in its search for food. Its wings respond unweariedly to the call of the sky. Its throat pours forth songs for joy of the new light. Universal humanity has sent us its call. Today we must respond. Response is the only true sign of life. True to his poetic instinct, the poet lives for the morrow and would have us do likewise. He presents to our admiring gaze the beautiful picture of the birds early in the morning singing hymns of praise as they soar into the sky. These birds had their day's food and soared with rested wings in whose veins new blood streamed through the previous night. But I have had the pain of watching birds who for want of strength could not be coaxed even to their wings. The human bird under the Indian sky gets up weaker than when he pretended to retire. For millions, it is an eternal vigil or an eternal trance. The hungry millions ask for one poem, invigorating food. It cannot be given to them. They must earn it. And they can earn it only by the sweat of their brow. If we take care of today, God will take care of tomorrow. And so on. They used images for arguments and played upon each other's images to press home a point. Tagore commented, "What irony of fate is this, that I should be preaching cooperation of cultures between the East and West on one side of the ocean, when the doctrine of non-cooperation is preached on the other side? I do not believe in the material civilization of the West, just as I do not believe in the physical body to be the highest truth in man. But I still believe in the true meeting of the East and the West." I hope I am as great a believer in free air as the great poet. I do not want my house to be walled on all sides and my windows to be stuffed. I want the cultures of all the lands to be blown about my house as freely as possible. But I refuse to be blown off my feet by any. Tagore acknowledged readily the loftiness of the Mahatma's point of view, as well as the principled positions taken. He commented previously, the vision of our political leaders had never reached beyond the English-knowing classes, because the country meant for them only that bookish aspect of it which is to be found in the Englishman's history. Here is the truth at last, not a mere quotation out of a book. So the name Mahatma, which is given to him, is his true name. Who else has felt so many men of India to be his own flesh and blood? But his own point of view also merited attention. But the sight that meets my eyes, on the one hand, people immensely busy, on the other, intensely afraid. What I hear on every side is that reason and culture as well must be closured. It is only necessary to cling to an unquestioning obedience. Obedience to whom? To some mantra, some unreasoned creed. The bard of Santiniketan, in a brilliant essay on the present movement, presents a series of word pictures which he alone can paint. It is an eloquent protest against authority, slave mentality, or whatever description one gives of blind acceptance of a passing mania, whether out of fear or hope. The poet tells us summarily to reject anything that does not appeal to our reason or heart. I am quite conscious of the fact that blind surrender to love is often more mischievous than a forced surrender to the lash of the tyrant. There is hope for the slave of the brute, none for that of love. But whilst I agree with all that the poet has said as of the necessity of watchfulness, lest we cease to think, I must not be understood to endorse the proposition that there is any such blind obedience on a large scale in this country. From our master, the Mahatma, we must learn the truth in all its purity. But the science and art of building up Swaraj is a vast subject. For this task, there must be aspiration and emotion, but no less must study and thought be there likewise. For that, the economist must think, the mechanic must labor, the educationist and statesman must teach and contrive. In a word, the mind of the country must exert itself in all directions. Above all, the spirit of inquiry throughout the whole country must be kept intact and untrammeled, its mind not made timid or inactive by compulsion, open or secret. God has given the Mahatma the voice that can call, for in him there is truth. Why should this not be our long-awaited opportunity? But his call is in one narrow field alone. To one and all he simply says, spin and weave, spin and weave. Is this the call of the new age to new creation? The question of using or refusing cloth of a particular manufacturer belongs mainly to economic science. The discussion of the matter should have been in the language of economics. I must confess, I do not draw any distinction between economics and ethics. Economics that hurt the moral well-being of an individual or a nation are immoral and therefore sinful. Thus, the economics that permit one country to prey upon another are immoral. It is sinful for me to wear the latest finery of Regent Street when I know that if I had but worn the things woven by my neighboring spinners and weavers, that would have clothed me and fed and clothed them. On the knowledge of my sin bursting upon me, I must consign the foreign garments to the flames, and thus purify myself, and henceforth rest content with the rough khadi made by my neighbors. Charlie Andrews, a friend of both, was worried. Would such differences drive the two noble souls apart? Taking a cautious step, he arranged a meeting between them in Tagore's ancestral home in Jorasanko in Kolkata. Only the three of them were present, and neither Tagore nor Gandhi issued any statement to the press. Many years later, Tagore narrated the happenings at the meeting to Leonard Elmhurst. Gandhiji came to visit me at my home in Jorasanko. He wanted very much to win my support for one or another of the various planks of his political program. Gurudev, you were yourself a leader and promoter of the Swadeshi movement. In India, over 20 years ago, you always wanted Indians to stand on their own feet as Indians and not try to be poor copies of Englishmen. My Swaraj movement is the natural child of your Swadeshi. You should join me and strengthen it. Through the movement, we have already achieved Hindu-Muslim unity. Gurudev, I do not agree. You have introduced it only on the political platform, where Muslim and Hindu happily hold a whip together to crack it at the British. I have not had any love for British officialdom, but can you really say you have a genuine friendship with the Muslim deep in your hearts? When the British either walk out or are driven out, what will happen then? Only by educating their children together for 2 to 3 generations can you eventually overcome the hostility that exists between Hindu and Muslim. The whole movement is based on the principle of non-violence, Gurudev. And that is why, as a poet who believes in peace, you can enter my movement and work for it. Come here, Gandhiji. Come. Look over the edge of this veranda. Look down there and see what your non-violent followers are up to. They have stolen the cloth from shops on Chitpur Road. They have lit that bonfire in my courtyard and are now howling around it like a pack of demented jackals. Is that non-violence? I see. If you cannot do much for us, may I ask for a simpler service? You can at least put the young Bhadralok with their Calcutta degrees to shame by getting them all to sit down and spin. You can lead the whole nation by spinning yourself. Poems I can spin, songs I can spin. But what a mess I would make, Gandhiji, of your precious cotton. A brief and diplomatic statement was issued by Andrews. They had a difference of temperament so wide that it was extremely difficult to arrive at a common intellectual understanding, though the moral ties of friendship remained entirely unbroken. Tagore's skepticism of Gandhi and his simplistic reliance on the charkha remained. He commented, "Our country is a land of rites and ceremonies, so that we have more faith in worshipping the feet of the priest than the divinity whom he serves. Only to such a country can come the charkha as the emblems of our deliverance. And the people, dazed into obedience by some specious temptation, go on turning their charkha in the seclusion of their corners, dreaming all the while that the car of Swaraj rolls onward in triumphal progress at every turn of their wheel. How often has my personal feeling of regard strongly urged me to accept at Mahatma Gandhi's hands my enlistment as a follower of the charkha cult, but as often as my reason and conscience restrained me, lest I should be a party to the raising of the charkha to a higher place than its due, thereby distracting attention from other more important factors in our task." Gandhi's response: when Sir Rabindranath's criticism of the charkha was published some time ago, several friends asked me to reply to it. His criticism has not displeased me. Why should mere disagreement with my views displease? On the contrary, frank criticism pleases me, for our friendship becomes all the richer for our disagreements. While this debate raged, Gandhi's reference to Tagore as Sir stirred up a hornet's nest. Following the traumatic massacre of innocents in the Jallianwala Bagh episode 7 years earlier, the poet had asked the viceroy to relieve him of the title. Many tongues wagged, and there were many loud whispers, as it was taken as sarcasm not befitting the Mahatma. January 18, 1930. The two met in Ahmedabad at Sabarmati Ashram. They had an animated discussion on various topics. Tagore had a cold. The sign of strain, exhaustion, and old age were quite visible on his countenance. "I'm 70 now, Mahatma Ji, and so I'm considerably older than you." "Oh, but an old wanderer of 60 can barely walk. A young poet of 70 can dance." "Allow me to ask you, what are your specific plans for the country? If you make the announcement that we seek complete freedom, and if you do not have a program to offer, would it not destroy our credibility?" "I am thinking furiously about it night and day. I do not see any sign of light in the surrounding darkness. But even if we cannot think of an effective program, we could not possibly hesitate to declare the country's objective, which can only mean full independence. The dominion status means what we have never understood it to mean." "We must know that we have not lost our country. At present, it is an illusion to believe that the country is ours. Let us begin with that confidence, and with a firm belief that to own our country is our right. When I left America, I had hoped that you would create a complete service-oriented organization of our own country, where everyone can contribute according to their own capacity. If you can entrust me with education, I will be too happy to render my services. We must find out the strengths lying dormant within the country and employ them. We need a person who enjoys the confidence of the people. You do. A note of optimism and the two parted. Gandhi found his program. It was to defy the SALT Act. He marched to Dandi in March 1930. When Tagore had already left for Europe, Gandhi never returned to Ahmedabad, and Tagore did not visit the city again. In Germany, Tagore saw a passion play based on the last days of the Christ's life. Soon after, almost overnight, he wrote a poem directly in English and called it The Child. It was a long poem, written in one stretch, the images hurtling to a climax. Tagore saw the parallels in the lives of Gandhi and Jesus. The poem reveals his anxiety about another parallel, a violent death. We may read excerpts of the poem later if there's interest. It was late 1930, and Gandhi had decided and declined an invitation to the first Round Table Conference. It was a principled decision, as his conditions had not been accepted. The British agenda was to create separate electorates in India based on religious identities, which would also have geographical separations. Thus, Bengal would be divided into an eastern sector with a Muslim majority, while the western sector would have a Hindu identity. Tagore recognized this as a short-sighted and politically motivated move with grave long-term consequences. On the other hand, Baba Saheb Ambedkar saw the agenda as an opportunity for the lowest castes of Hindus, the Harijans, as Gandhi called them, to assert themselves and seek a separate electorate for themselves. The Harijans were not Hindus, he argued, as the Hindu majority had never accepted them as their own. Naturally, Gandhi was fiercely opposed to the idea. He threatened a nationwide agitation and to go on an indefinite fast. In September 1932, Gandhi was imprisoned without a trial in Pune. Tagore was very much in the thoughts of Gandhi, even in prison. Dear Gurudev, it is the early morning and 3 o'clock of Tuesday. I enter the fiery gate at noon. If you can bless the effort, I want it. You have been to me a true friend because you have been a candid friend, often speaking your thoughts aloud. I had looked forward to a firm opinion from you one way or the other, but you have refused to criticize. Oh, it can now only be during my fast. I will yet prize your criticism if your heart condemns my action. I am not too proud to make an open confession of my blunder, whatever the cost of confession, if I find myself in error. If your heart approves the action, I want your blessing. It will sustain me. I hope I've made myself clear. Within a few days, there was a deterioration in Gandhi's health. Greatly concerned and moving, Tagore left Santiniketan for Pune. He wrote a long essay on the entire journey and the circumstances leading to Gandhi breaking his fast. The entire essay is available as a published monograph. We shall go directly to the end of the essay. I could hardly have fully realized how great is the strength of this frail man had I not come near to him like this. Today, to millions of hearts in India has reached the message of this immortal spirit resting under the shadow of death's altar. In groups, men and women clad in white khadar quietly held discussions. Noticeable was the disciplined calm of this gathering inside the jail. At last, with the government's red-sealed envelope in hand, appeared the Inspector General of Prisons. After he had finished reading, Mahatma Ji called his friends to discuss the communication. One understood that it did not go against Mahatma Ji's wishes. The great penance of the fast was now over. The lemon juice was prepared by Srimati Kamala Nehru. According to the request of the Inspector General of Prisons, it was to be given to Mahatma Ji by Srimati Kasturibai. Mahadev told me that my Gitanjali song, When the Heart is Dried and Parched Up, was a favorite of Mahatma Ji's. I had forgotten the tune, which once I gave it. I sang it to an improvised tune. Pandit Shyam Sastri read out from the Vedas. Srimati Kasturibai handed to Mahatma Ji the glass of fruit juice, which he took and slowly sipped. Then the members of Sabarmati Ashram and others sang in chorus the hymn Vaishnavajan. Within jail barricades, this great festival took place. Never had happened such an event in human history. A sacrificial yajna was begun inside the prison, and it reached its great fulfillment. A period of intense anxiety for all ended on a peaceful note. Gandhi remarked later, Gurudev, did you know that by singing your song on that day, you were setting a precedence? Subsequently, that song was sung whenever I broke my fast. Gandhi was so moved by the love showered by the poet, he wrote to Charlie Andrews, Gurudev is still at it. That little fast brought me many treasures. Gurudev was the richest find. If somebody had said, fast to find Gurudev, I should have done it without a second thought. I was dying to find a corner in his heart. Thank God I found it through the fast. 1934. In the wake of the great earthquake in Bihar, Tagore was compelled to write to Gandhi again. The press reports that you, in a recent speech referring to the earthquake in Bihar, spoke as follows. I want you to be superstitious enough to believe with me that the earthquake is a divine chastisement for the great sin we have committed against those whom we describe as Harijans. I find it difficult to believe this. But if this be your real view on the matter, I do not think it should go unchallenged. Herewith you will find a rejoinder from me. If you are correctly reported in the press, would you kindly send it to the press? Mahatma Ji was gracious to publish the rejoinder in the Harijan. It has caused me painful surprise to find Mahatma Gandhi accusing those who blindly follow their own social custom of untouchability of having brought down God's vengeance upon certain parts of Bihar, evidently specially selected for his desolating displeasure. It is all the more unfortunate, for this kind of unscientific view of things is too readily accepted by a large section of our countrymen. I am compelled to utter a truism in asserting that physical catastrophes have their inevitable origin in combinations of physical facts. The bard of Santiniketan is Gurudev for me, as he is for the residents of that great institution. But Gurudev and I early discovered certain differences, and it cannot suffer by Gurudev's latest utterance on my linking the Bihar calamity with the sin of untouchability. He had a perfect right to utter his protest when he believed that I was in error. My profound regard for him would make me listen to him more readily than to any other critic. But in spite of my having read his statement 3 times, I adhere to what I have written in these columns. We do not know all the laws of God, nor their working. Visitations like droughts, floods, earthquakes, and the like, though they seem to have only physical origins, are for me somehow connected with man's morals. And that was that. As he put it, the subject of God's will was in the realm of faith and had no need of debate. On September the 10th, 1937, the poet was suddenly taken ill. He had been in Kolkata, and when he returned to Santiniketan at night, he fell unconscious. As the telegraph office was then closed, the staff at the railway office sent a telephonic message to Kolkata at 1 o'clock at night, asking that doctors should be sent to Santiniketan immediately. Dr. Sir Neil Ratan Sarkar left for Santiniketan at 2 o'clock by car and reached there early in the morning. Tagore was completely unconscious for 62 hours, and all hopes were given up. Once he regained consciousness, the recovery was very rapid. When he was told about an anxious message from Gandhi inquiring about his health, he responded, "Dear Mahatma Ji, the first thing that welcomed me into the world of life after the period of stupor I passed through was your message of affectionate anxiety, and it was fully worth the cost of sufferings. With grateful love." Between 1938 and 1939, Tagore paid glorious tributes to Gandhi. An ascetic himself, he does not frown upon the joys of others, but works for the enlivening of their existence day and night. He exalts poverty in his own life, but no man in India has striven more assiduously than he for the material welfare of his people. A reformer with the zeal of a revolutionary, he imposes severe constraints on the very passions he provokes. He advises his followers to hate evil without hating the evildoer. It sounds an impossible precept, but he has made it as true as it can be made in his own life. Great as he is as a politician, as an organizer, as a leader of men, as a moral reformer, he is greater than all these as a man, because none of these aspects and activities limits his humanity. Though an incorrigible idealist and giving to referring all conduct to certain pet formulae of his own, he is essentially a lover of men and not of mere ideas. If he proposes an experiment for society, he must first subject himself to its ordeals. If he calls for a sacrifice, he must first pay its price himself. This man seems greater than his virtues, great as they are. A moving tribute, wholly authentic, but finally an admission. I should confess that I do not always see eye to eye with Mahatma Ji. By which I mean that had I been endowed with his force of character, my scheme of work would have been different. But though I may have the imagination to conceive, I have not the power to carry out. Only a few men in the world have this power. And since our country has had the good fortune of giving birth to such a man, the way should be kept clear for his progress. I certainly would never think of impeding it. In 1940, Gandhi visited Tagore in Santiniketan. As Gandhi was taking his leave, Tagore handed him a letter. Among other things, it sought Gandhi's interest in Visva Bharati. And now, before you take your leave from Santiniketan, I make my fervent appeal to you. Accept this institution under your protection, giving it an assurance of permanence if you consider it to be a national asset. Visva Bharati is like a vessel which is carrying the cargo of my life's treasure, and I hope it may claim a special care from my countrymen for its preservation. You may depend upon my doing all I can in the common endeavor to assure its permanence. But I look to you to keep your promise to sleep religiously an hour daily during the day. Though I have always regarded Santiniketan as my second home, this visit has brought me nearer to it than ever before. As early as the January of 1929, Miraben, Madeline Slade, a disciple of Gandhiji, had written to Tagore after returning from Santiniketan. I now realize how Santiniketan and Sabarmati are two fair daughters of the same great motherland, both with exquisite beauties of their own, different to look upon outwardly, and yet with that fundamental likeness which only daughters of the same parent can have. Tagore had replied in his inimitable style, "Human life has its two aspects. One is the discipline of truth, and the other, the fullness of expression." Sabarmati represents that discipline of truth. For Mahatma Ji is born with the pure fire of truth. His nature is one with it. Being a poet, my mission is to inspire life's fullness of expression. And I hope Santiniketan carries that ideal in all its activities. According to the Upanishad, the reconciliation of the contradiction between tapasya and ananda is at the root of creation. Mahatma Ji is the prophet of tapasya. I am the poet of ananda. In 1941, Tagore turned 80. The World War was already into its third year. At a reception organized to celebrate the landmark birthday, his essay on the crisis in civilization was read out on his behalf. A short excerpt. The wheels of fate will someday compel the English to give up their Indian empire. But what kind of India will they leave behind? What stark misery! When the stream of their administration of centuries runs dry at last, what a waste of mud and filth they will leave behind them. I had at one time believed that the springs of civilization would issue out of the heart of Europe. But today, when I am about to quit the world, that fate has gone bankrupt altogether. And yet, I shall not commit the grievous sin of losing faith in man. A greeting by telegram from Gandhi arrived. 4 not enough? May you finish 5. Thanks, message. But 4 is impertinence, 5 intolerable. Did either of them know that this would be the final communication exchanged? Tagore breathed his last on August 7, 1941.
You have been listening to BIC Talks by Bangalore International Centre. If you liked what you heard, do follow us on social media. Keep up with our programming by signing up for our mailer on the website or leave us a review on Apple Podcast or iTunes. The crew that makes these podcasts possible is S. Sarvana Raj and Ranjit Kumar on sound supervision and production. Artwork is designed by Chandani Venkataraman of Crisscross Design Studio. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel on your favorite podcast platform. It can also be accessed on our website, bangaloreinternationalcentre.org. This is Sunaina Jain signing off on behalf of everyone at BIC.